Good morning. My name is Simon Brockape. I'm from Ginigan-Zibi. I'm a Anishinaabe Algonquin, and we're here next to the Rideau River this morning, and we're going to be talking about beavers, amidst. This beaver started chewing this tree about 3 months ago, and it's pretty amazing. They were able to knock down the tree about 1.5 feet wide, and you can see the beaver teeth all through the tree. And my ancestors used a like an adze. This is a beaver adze, and it's used like this. So there's a archaeological site just near Pembroke, and there's thousands of these beaver teeth in the site. You can have a look at it. It's red, and my daughter told me the reason the beaver's teeth are red or orange is there's iron in it, and they're quite sharp. And when you take a look at the tree, you can see it was like the teeth cut through the tree like it was butter, and it's pretty amazing. So this beaver chewed around the tree, but it left a bit of the bark here, and I was anticipating that the beaver wanted the tree to fall this way into the water. So a lot of the limbs are around its lodge for the winter, so it'll have food throughout the winter. But the beaver's pretty amazing. I did a project at Ginigan-Zibi. We were doing birch bark baskets, and just about every time I did one of those workshops, we also did a workshop with paddles, a paddle like this. We made paddles, and I couldn't believe it. We were told that in the past, a paddle could be done in a day right from a log. So they would start with a log and end up with a paddle at the end of the day. Some of the elders and a lot of the younger people were saying that at one time Algonquins did not have the canoe, and one day somebody was cleaning a beaver, and they opened up the beaver's chest cavity and saw the ribs in it, and that inspired the canoe. So when we look at a canoe, we see the ribs in it, and the link between the canoe and its paddle. This particular paddle is a beaver tail paddle, so we can imagine the canoe as being as a beaver. It inspired the making of a birch bark canoe. The other kind of paddle is a otter tail, and we were told stories about the beaver sharing its lodge with other animals. Some people talk about the beaver sharing its lodge in the winter with otters and also muskrats. And so when you actually look at it, the beaver eats vegetation, trees, and the beaver also eat medicine. So the other animals that live with it in the winter, the otter and the muskrat, well, particularly the otter, will eat fish. So they're not competing for the same food source. So the beaver teaches us about sharing and being able to share its lodge with other animals, particularly during the winter. So this is the Rideau River, and in the winter it's all frozen. Well, it's starting to freeze now. But last winter I saw otters on the canal, which is just over here, and it had a hole, and I couldn't understand what I saw. It looked like a star, and I got a closer look, and it was a frog. It had thrown up a frog, and then as I was looking at the hole, a fish got thrown out by the otter. So there's actually otters, beavers, all kinds of animals that live in this area, right in the middle of Ottawa. A friend of mine who's a playwright said she started dreaming about a giant beaver. she didn't realize that we Algonquins have these stories of megafauna, which I'll tell you in a minute. But what she found was she kept dreaming about this beaver coming to her and speaking to her. And then a few months later, she found out she had cancer. And the cancer was quite severe. It was, I think she said it was a stage 4 cancer. And she went to a doctor, and the doctor said, we're gonna have to do some chemotherapy. And in the meantime, she went to a healer, and the healer said, I'm gonna give you beaver medicine. And there was 4 different types of medicines that she was given in a tea, and all these trees are medicine. And so a lot of times people will use the bark as medicine. So she took the medicine, and within a couple of months she went back to her doctor, and the doctor said the cancer had all disappeared, and he wanted to know what she took. But she wrote a play about it. It's quite a beautiful play, which I've seen. It's all about the importance of beavers in our life. I think we underestimate the beaver. Sometimes we will see the beaver as a symbol on our coins. And what does that mean? I think when you look back historically in Canada, the industry was fur trade. And that's really was the basis of our economy up to 1850, 1900. It certainly was a part of the economy for Algonquin people in this region. So the beaver played a really important role in all our lives in the history of Canada. The beaver pelts were taken over to England, and they were made into hats, and it really helped develop the economy for Indigenous people, the Hudson's Bay Company, and other fur traders. So that's the early history of Canada. This time of the year, the Canada geese comes through, and you can hear them over there. They're just sitting over there. A couple of weeks ago, it was a little warmer, and there were literally thousands of Canada geese, ducks. In the summer, you can see them floating down the river. It's quite beautiful. But you know the story of the V shape of the Canada geese. The Canada geese teaches us about the importance of working together. The V shape lead goose gets switched, so everybody takes the lead in migration. And the Canada geese teaches us that important lesson about cooperating with each other and working with each other. I was told that they're able to fly 30% further because they're in this V shape and cooperating with each other. So there's a lot to learn about geese, and sometimes you'll see literally thousands of them just over at Dow's Lake landing, and the sky is just dark with the Canada geese and ducks. So in the summer, I go fishing here with my youngest daughter, Mari, and we literally really enjoy ourselves fishing. There's frogs, turtles. Sometimes you'll see snapping turtles sitting on logs, and this will be just covered with plants. So this was just cut this summer. You can see the teeth marks in it. I've got our little ads. You can see how the teeth just bit through it. So if the beaver doesn't use its teeth, the teeth keep growing. So it's kind of, in a way, forced to it's forced to eat trees. One of my friends from Gittigan-Zibi was saying that she had an orphan baby beaver, and she put it in her basement, and the little beaver was taking clothes and making a making a dam out of the clothes in her basement. Anyway, she ended up re-releasing it as it got older. We use a crooked knife, and it's a blade that's probably about this big. And my father and grandfather and all my ancestors, since we had steel, would use portable small knife like this to cut, to make paddles. Quite beautiful. But then I was told that the beaver was the inspiration for the crooked knife. And I was up in northern Saskatchewan in the Dene region, and I was talking about this, and one of the elders says, I know how to make one. So he took this beautiful moose antler, and he cut it, and within a day I had this beautiful beaver adze crooked knife, and I keep it in my freezer because the hide kind of gets a little, it starts to rot. So here in the summer, snapping turtles lay their eggs, and you can see them crossing the this pathway, and these little hills here, they'll dig a hole, they'll lay their eggs, and a few months later, in later summer, you can actually see the little snapping turtles coming up out of the ground, and as soon as they get out of the nest, they get over to the water, and they go in the water. So they'll lay maybe 100 eggs or so. So it's quite fascinating. A lot of kids come here and adults, and it's a big celebration when the turtle eggs are hatching. So the whole region, I see snapping turtles walking around. There's fish. I go fishing with my daughter in the summer here, and it's quite beautiful. So you can see the Beaver Lodge just over there. It's pretty fascinating. Okay, so we're just going to go over to the Beaver Lodge here. You can see the beaver has been, or beavers have been busy collecting wood for that'll eat throughout the winter. It cut down this tree here, and this summer, for some reason, it started rebuilding its lodge. In fact, I saw some kids were jumping on it this summer, and I told them that I explained the Beaver Lodge, and they were pretty strong. But anyways, the kids respected the Beaver's Lodge and stopped jumping on it. But this summer, it was rebuilding its lodge, packed more mud on it. My wife was saying that the beavers will carry the mud like this in its hands, in its arms, and walk. And so, of course, we don't see all this work that's being done because they're nocturnal. But they've put brush over there for the winter. It's winter food storage, and in order to get into the lodge, it swims underwater, gets into its lodge, and it's quite a beautiful lodge inside. So in the summer, you'll see them swimming around. This summer, my daughter and I saw a young beaver just swimming over here, and we must have frightened it because it'll flap its tail on the water. It makes quite a large slapping sound, and it's actually kind of frightening. Anyway, so when they're in danger, they do that. But we have a story A lot of indigenous people will say, we've been here since the beginning of time, and quite literally, Algonquins or Anishinaabe have been here since the beginning of time. We have this story about a giant beaver, a megafauna. So the megafaunas died out between 9 and 10,000 years ago. When you go across Turtle Island, a lot of indigenous people have similar megafauna stories about these giant animals. And so our story begins with a trickster, and this trickster loved to eat beaver. So he went up the Ottawa River, or Gitchisibi, and then went north into Quebec and found like this, in the middle of a lake, the giant beaver's lodge, and there was a dam. So this character's name was Wasaychuk. And Wasaychuk, in English, we call him Whiskey Jack. Many of you are probably familiar with Whiskey Jack bird. And so he went up the Ottawa River, or what we call the Gitchisibi, and went west. And then he went north into western Quebec. And there was a big dam and a big giant beaver lodge. And so he was going to swim under the lodge, but he wasn't a very good swimmer. So he decides to break the dam. So he broke the dam, and through all this hard work, he got tired and he fell asleep. So he falls asleep, and of course all the water runs out, and so does the beaver. The beaver goes further south. And when he wakes up, there's no beaver, and he's upset with himself, but he doesn't give up. He goes further south, and he finds another large dam and a beaver lodge, but this time he brings a friend with him. And he told his friend, he says, I work really hard in breaking the dam, and sometimes I get tired, I'll fall asleep. But if I fall asleep, I want you to wake me up. So he works really hard, breaks the dam, the water's running out, and he falls asleep. When the water runs out, his friend tries to wake him up, and he had a hard time waking him up. He couldn't wake him up. He's sound asleep. And when he wakes up, of course, the beaver had escaped. And he gets mad. Instead of getting upset at himself, he gets mad at his buddy, and he kicks his buddy, and his buddy goes way, way, way up into the sky, and he gets so close to the sun that he turns into a rock. And then he lands back Algonquin territory. And so through the whole region, all through Algonquin territory, you see these large boulders, which we call our grandfathers. And my daughters asked my dad once, where did all these boulders come from? And he says, one day it just rained all these boulders. Many of you who are familiar with the Ottawa region will be familiar with all these boulders. They're just everywhere. And so the beaver escapes again. It comes closer to Ottawa. There's an island near Pembroke, and that's where it builds its last dam. And of course, Wasaychuk is chasing it, and they're getting older. Wasaychuk breaks the dam, but this time the beaver, rather than escaping, just crawls up on the side of the Gitchisibi, the Ottawa River, and passes away. And when you look at the hills along the side of the Ottawa River, even the Gatineaus here near Ottawa, you'll see the hills in the shape of these giant beavers. So the hills are to remind us that Algonquin people have been here since the beginning of time immemorial. So we've learned a lot about beavers and their dam making, but one of the things that we learn from this is that the beaver has what people call this ecosystem engineer. It literally created the territory in the sense that over the centuries, these beaver dams got bigger and bigger, and they would form small ponds, they would form lakes. So if you're familiar with the Ottawa region, and a lot of Ontario, it's just dotted with lakes, and these lakes were likely formed by beaver dams. I think when we think about beaver dams, we think about them as being small, covering a small stream. But if you go into Saskatchewan today, there's a beaver dam that's almost a kilometer wide. And so the beaver dams create an environment where plants can grow, more fish can live in the region. It provides foods for animals like deers and moose. So it really creates the environment that we can live a healthy life. And the beaver was, in many ways, almost became extinct because of the fur trade. And if you go into the US and in Scotland, they've started to reintroduce the beaver because of global warming has caused droughts. The beaver is able to store water in their dams. And with sometimes you get floods, and the dams prevent a large body of water or a large amount of water going down the river. So it kind of regulates the rivers and streams where beavers live. So these eco-engineers are being reintroduced into regions that they haven't been in there, living there for hundreds of years. The beaver is also considered by many indigenous people as the symbol of wisdom. And the symbol of wisdom, as we've demonstrated, it's a fairly small animal. It's able to have a big impact through its hard work and the knowledge that it carries over the centuries. So we respect the beaver's wisdom, and we try to emulate examples that it teaches us: collaboration, sharing with other human beings, other animals, living a good life. So this beaver lives a beautiful life, and it symbolizes to all the people that live in this area of the benefit of hard work and the love it has for the land and for all creation. Miigwech.